Did you start with TM?
Yeah, I started with TM. I've always been like a searcher, but this at Theta teaching and your teaching, I think that has really done it for me. But I forget so easily. Life just, takes you out of it. When I spoke to you last week, I was going through something in my life where an old boyfriend came back in my life, and so I just totally forgot everything at Theta, and I was back in my old programming.
And what you remember or forget is not you, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I say what you can remember or forget is not you. What comes and goes can't be what you are.
I was going to ask you about love. About love.
Well, what love are you talking about? The love-hate relationship, which is the mental concept?
Maybe even emotional love, or what kinds of love are there?
Well, there's the love of being.
Mm-hmm.
It's that Chidananda being, knowing, and loving to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's no conditions attached to that one.
No, just loving to be.
Yeah. Well, don't you love to be?
Yeah, I
Isn't
don't
it quite
have
natural?
a problem with that one.
Right.
But emotional love that people have for.
That's love-hate relationship.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
I love him, I love him, I love him. He didn't turn up last night and I hate him. Can change just like that, can't it? So that'll always be a problem from that aspect.
And that kind of love.
But you see, it's the dualism. Me and him or her or whatever it is, you see. So it's only a me or a separate entity that can have that problem. But are you a separate entity? Have you looked at that? What have you looked at with these things? This teaching?
Supposedly we're not separate entities.
Supposedly, have you seen that you couldn't possibly be?
Couldn't possibly be a separate entity? I can intellectually get that, but I haven't actually realized it.
Well, have a look at it. What is it that in you that you call you, me? What's that idea you have that you call me?
It's all our programming.
Isn't it an idea? You can't negate your beingness right now, can you? You know that you are right now. That knowingness is there, and you can't negate it, can you? Under no circumstances can you say, I'm not. You're still seeking something, eh? You say you haven't realised them, so you are actually still seeking them.
Yeah.
Well, we say here, right from the start, what you're seeking you already are. And it's the search that is the problem. Because the search implies there is something to get. But, you see, you start from the fact of your own being. Start from there instead of looking for anything else. You can't negate that beingness, can you? Under no circumstances can you say, I am not. Even if you say, I am not, or think I am not, that knowingness has to be there to be able to say it. So there is still a knowing of that I am not if you're thinking it, isn't there? Now you haven't moved away from that knowingness. And as I say, it's the search itself that is the problem. So that sense of presence or that knowingness expresses through your mind as the thought I am. To communicate that you are, you've got to say I am, haven't you? And that I am is a thought. So the thought I am is still not the reality. It's the closest you can ever get to it with the mind. And that I am is just a translation of that presence awareness. that sense of presence, the knowing that you are, that presence awareness, or awareness of presence. There's an awareness of now, isn't there? And that the actuality of that is always right now. You can't be aware a moment ago, nor can you be aware a moment in the future. Yeah, that knowingness or awareness is there right now. But when it's translated into thought, I am aware, or I am this, or I am that, what are we talking about? We're talking about that thought, I am, to which has been added other concepts. I am this, or I am that, whatever you believe yourself to be, based on your past events and experiences and your conditioning, and you form this mental concept about yourself, what you believe to be. But if you have a look at that, you see it's insubstantial. You can't grasp it. I am so-and-so, or whatever image you've got about yourself. It's ungraspable because it's just made up of thoughts or concepts. And above all, it hasn't got any independent nature. By that I mean it can't stand on its own. If you weren't conscious or aware, you couldn't have that thought. You couldn't have any thought without that consciousness or awareness. So it's not independent of that, so it's really not what you believe yourself to be. It's a nothingness. It's only a group of thoughts, images or concepts, which the energy of belief has gone into because we've never questioned it and looked at, that we believe it to be what I am. Now, and the ancients tell us that that's always and ever our problem. Selfishness, self-centered, self-will, or the ego. It's always the ego or the self-centered that's our problem. Because that ego or self-centered implies a separate entity. Hey. Now if you look at that body and see what it's made up of, it's nothing but the elements. It's made up of air, just a space, the same as the air and the space around you here, the water, the earth, the fire, no different from these other elements, but it's seemingly patterning into a shape and form, and seemingly we take that form, because we don't investigate it, we take that shape and form to be what we really are. So I don't call it God or anything, I call it, because, you know, we all have our different concepts about God, whatever different religions or we've been brought up as, or as we've been brought up atheistic or agnostic or whatever, we have a concept about that word God. But I call it intelligence energy because I think that's much simpler. And I'm not talking about your intellect, I'm talking about the same intelligence energy that functions this universe. Keep the stars in orbit. You know, the stars moving around in orbit implies there's an energy there, and that they're able to move in an orbit implies there's an intelligence there. Keeps the Earth going around the sun, the seasons coming and going, the tides coming in and out. You know? And if you have a look at it closely, it's breathing you, it's beating your heart, it's growing your hair and your fingernails, replacing the cells in your body right now. There's no one there saying, I've got to take my next breath. You don't think that, do you? You understanding what I'm saying, or is it? Right, so as I say, so that's the sort of intelligence I'm talking about. So then we might look in that, so you can't find a centre in this body anywhere that you can say this is what I am, because, you know, that centre is only thought based. And then if you look in your mind and see what mind is, see those elements can be broken down into quarks, electrons, whatever, into pure energy also. So in nature there's still that intelligence energy, and the very fact that it's vibrating into this particular pattern or that particular pattern implies there's an intelligence there that's keeping it in that shape. So so the intelligence energy that is functioning in the universe hasn't moved away when it moves into this body, has it? As something separate from the body. And we're searching, in the belief that we're separate, the search is to make ourselves whole or complete. not really realising that's an erroneous belief that's put upon us by our parents, our nation, our society, our schools. So the search continues out there. The little child likes a warm, loving family around it. If it's got a warm and loving family, he feels much more secure, less vulnerable. And next level, families form into tribes. The bigger and stronger my tribe is, the more secure, less vulnerable. It goes on from there, nations form into nations because of that insecurity. And nations fight with nations because of that insecurity, go to war with them. Never once realising that there is no separation as such. So when we go along like that, and somebody might come along and say, listen, have you ever questioned yourself, ever had a look and see of what you believe yourself to be, see if that's really true? And when that starts to happen, when you start to look at that, you realise there's no way in the world you could possibly be separate. So that's why we say what you're seeking you already are. And then instead of trying to get something or gain something, all that's necessary to do is to keep questioning these erroneous beliefs and they'll all fall apart under that investigation, and you're left with what you've always been, that presence awareness. The ancients call it, aside from non-duality, one without a second. In the Dzogchen scriptures of Buddhism, they call it non-conceptual, self-shining, ever-fresh, presence awareness, just this, nothing else. The Hebrews call it, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one God. There is no one or no thing other. They say none other, but that's what they're meaning. No. So there's only that. And all the scriptures will tell you that it's omnipresence, talking about God or the Supreme, omnipresence, omnipotence and omniscience. All presence, total power, and total intelligence or total knowing. So if it's total, does it leave room for you, me, or anything else? So it's not a new thing we're talking about. It's something that's come down through the ages, through all the scriptures, but even the scriptures lose sight of it, they garble it up. And we lose sight of it, and so we suffer accordingly. But in realising and seeing that there's no separation, there's no centre here, we see that centre or reference point, that image we've got about ourselves, which we add to that I thought, the events and experience and conditioning, and form a mental concept that seems concrete or real. And that is a reference point which we evaluate everything from. It's judged from near as good, bad, pleasant, painful, love, hate, and knowing, not knowing, happy, sad. All these things are referred to that reference point. But when we say it's an invalid reference point and realise that there's no reference point there, what are we going to refer it to? There's nothing to refer it to. We're left with just what is. Just as it is. What's coming up in the moment, just as it is. And what is means it's unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected. There's no stance taken. Now when that reference point is there, that is, it's evaluated from there. I like it or I don't like it. It's good, it's bad. And we know that from past memory where we've referred to that reference point. And we want to alter it, modify and correct it. Instead of leaving it as what is, the thought comes up, I don't like this, so it wants to alter it, modify it or correct it. And that's resistance to it. And any resistance is conflict. And any conflict is disease. If you're in conflict, you're not at ease, are you? If you're not at ease, that's disease. Keep that conflict going long enough, it'll manifest as disease in your body. But again, in seeing that there's really nothing there with any substance or any impermanent nature, you've dissolved it, it's fallen away. There's nothing there you can grasp. And so, anything that comes your way just passes through. And that frees up the energy. Instead of the energy being in conflict, which is disease, it frees it up to flow. And so when you talk about love, from that point of view, it all depends, it's relative to the image you have about yourself and the image you have about him. So it's not really love because you're seeing them from a false reference point and you're seeing them this mental picture. But there's a natural response there, natural attraction as such, where there's no him or no you, then it's just like a magnet which will attract to itself, and if it's not meant to happen or doesn't happen, it'll repel it. And all that conflict about, is it right, is it not right, doesn't need to take place, because you're not seeing the true thing, the true essence, if you're seeing it through that reference point. You've only got your concept about him and the concept about yourself. Now, each one of us in this room would have a different concept about you, and you've got this concept about yourself. Which concept would be right? None, because they're only concepts. But if I'm looking at you without a concept, I'm seeing you fresh and new in this moment. Haven't got any concept about you whatsoever. And there can be a resonance then with your true essence without having to formulate a concept or a picture about it. So if you can see, you see from that all problems are problems of relationship. And I'm not just talking about the male-female relationship. No. It's always me relative to this, relative to the chair, the colour of the chair or the table, relative to what I'm eating, or relative to something else, you see. So that's where all our suffering and all problems come from, that problem of relationship. But in the natural state, in the oneness, there's no relative to. It's just one as is, always and ever. And that's had to go into the early part of it to try and let you see where it's coming from here,
The mind just keeps going.
The mind will always keep going.
Doing that thing of evaluating.
Yes.
The good, bad.
Yes, but I understand. Yes, while ever you're embodied, a lot of people, once they, if they say they see this, they think there's going to be no mind there. But while ever you've got that body, you're going to have a mind that's going to function in the same way, in the pairs of opposites. But in the investigation and seeing through it, you're not bound by it. You've seen through it, and that's the scriptural saying, know the truth and the truth will set you free. If you go down to the ocean, you see a lovely blue sea. And I said, do you get a bucket of blue water out of the sea? What would you say? I say, get me a bucket of blue water out of the sea. What would you say to that?
If he told you, go get a bucket of blue water, what would you say? Would you go get the blue water?
Not blue.
That's right. But you know it's not blue, but you'll see it. It appears to be blue, but you're not taken in by the appearance, are you? You've seen through it. Same with this. You're not taken in by the appearance or the concepts you've had about yourself previously, though they still arise. The blue sea will always be there, so will the blue sky. The sky is space, the space in this room. There's no blueness in it. Go up in a plane 30,000 feet and you'll see the blueness will always be further out. So the blueness is only an appearance too. You look out, you go down to the beach and look over where the sky and the horizon meet. Now you're not fearful of walking out there and falling off the edge of the earth now, are you? But in the old days people did fear that. They believed it to be so. But they know the truth about it now, and there's no way in the world you can fall off it. So this illusionary idea or concept we have about ourselves needs to be investigated and seen through. And seeing that, knowing the truth, you're free. So the truth will set you free. You're free of that bondage of self. That's basically all it's about, really. Now, as you say, thoughts will continue to arise, but you see that they're only conceptual. And look up in your dictionary, see what a concept is. A concept's never the thing. And we've got a group of concepts about ourselves. They're not what you really are. Got a group of concepts about other people. They're not what they are either.
So Bob, no one can tell the truth, because anytime you say something, you have a negative and positive aspect.
Yes, as soon as you open your mouth, you're conceptualising.
Right.
But we use concepts to point to the truth.
Exactly.
That's all we can do. I can't tell you anything. I can't teach you anything. I can only point some of these things out. And if they've been investigated already and understood, there's no need to even point them. But if they haven't been seen or understood, a little bit of pointing could be of assistance if you move to look in that direction. If you're not moved to look in that direction, it doesn't matter.
Then it's just like a belief system, or any belief system. In the final analysis, once you start speaking about it, because one's idea of God or the truth or whatever is different in each frame of reference.
A belief system becomes a reference point also.
Yes.
And a belief, if you look in the dictionary again, a belief is never the thing.
That's right.
It's only a belief. So it's not, we've got an invalid reference point again. And it's not worth anything.
So you got to just keep digging out those invalid reference points. And now when the body-mind mechanism does not exist any longer, then there is no one to question. When you die, when I die, there's no one to say, who am I? It's theoretical that you always were and always will be, in the sense of the word you use as the potential energy.
What came into it, he's functioning naturally, you know. And like, I mean to say, this body, where did this body start from? Did it start with the swerve and the ovum, the essence of the food eaten by your father and your mother? No, that was, essence of the food was energy, taken in prana or chi as they call it. And the essence of the food, well, that food was chi, prana and energy. So you see from that, the life continually lives on life. It can't know death, because out of life, when this body, see this body is integrating now, that energy is functioning in a, if you like to call it a positive manner, it turns around at a certain time and starts to disintegrate, you know. And in that disintegration, enzymes will start to devour this. Then it's taken over by maggots and worms and fire or burnt in ash, and the residual, what's left over, goes back into the earth. There might be a seed there, will be nourished by that, and a blade of grass or a vegetable or something will grow in that. Something will eat that, and so the cycle goes on. Life is continually and always living on life. You know, and that life is that cognizing emptiness with the capacity of knowing, which is the intelligence. So it never had a beginning, it never had an end. It's timeless. And we've only got a concept of time because, you know, if I ask you what past is there, if you don't think about it, well, you've got to pause a moment, and in that pausing, with no thought there, you can't say there is a past or a future without a thought. The same with the future. Is there a future if you don't think about it? You can't say there is a future. So you see from that, time is really a mental concept. And when you're thinking about the past, you're not thinking about the past in the past. You can't live a moment ago. You're thinking about the past, the actual thinking about it is happening right now. And you can't anticipate or imagine a moment in the future when the actual thinking about it is right now. So, and right now is this omnipresent. So we've never ever moved away from this omnipresent. Again, proving that time is a mental concept as such. So there is an appearance of conceptual time in the mind. So it's you are what you are is bodiless, mindless, timeless, spaceless, birthless, deathless, pure presence awareness, just this, nothing else, as they say.
But that's another belief.
It's a concept.
See, that's the whole, no matter how far back you go with it, it's a belief, because as soon as you say these things, you and I and nobody can know anything beyond the phenomenal world.
No, and you don't need to. The fact is that you can't negate your knowing this right now. That's the fact. That's the only basic fact you know. And there is no other time than apart from that now. That's not conceptual.
Yeah.
So you look back and you can't say there was a time when you were not, because you've got to conceptualise. Nor can you say there will be a time when you will not be, because you've got to conceptualise again. And where's that conceptualising taking place? In the knowingness of the moment, of the actuality of the moment. So that's all there ever was and never will be. It's timeless now.
That's good. Yes, okay. It's case closed. You can't...
All flows will continue to be.
Can't dispute it.
That's it. Because when you start disputing, you're on the roller coaster again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we lose sight of that and start the buts and the ifs and all the rest of it.
Right. You leap right out of that.
Out of old habit pattern, that's all it is habit pattern, and recognising these habits.
Yeah.
You catch them, you don't have to go along with them. That's all right.
But you still have to go along living your life. Right?
Well, not you, Jack. Living this is, you're being, if you like to say, you're being lived, because it was that intelligence energy that drew that body from the sperm and the ovum. All the time it was in the womb, the first years of your life, and it's still functioning, and the livingness is still there right now. So the idea of me is...
It's so easy to jump out of that. That's because every time you start, you jump out of that to I'm living, and instead of realizing living is just living.
And that living essence is no thing. It's nothing we can grasp with a thought or a concept. And say this body has sensations. Does it? Take that living essence out of the body, it's a corpse then. You can cut it, it won't feel it. The eyes can't see it, the ears can't hear. It can do nothing of itself. To say there's sensations in the body, but they're not in the body. It's that life essence, that intelligence in it that's given the idea of sensations or the feelings in that body. It's that life essence that's doing everything, that's patterning it all. And that is no thing, because it's got no shape, it's got no form, it's got no time. And that's where you see, we know this in our language. This manifestation we call a phenomenal universe, don't we? It's phenomenal. Look in your dictionary and see the definition of phenomena. The definition of phenomena is that which appears to be. So it's appearance only. It's only appearing to be so. Now the opposite of phenomenon is noumenon. And if you look in your dictionary and see what the word noumenon means, which the noumenon is the unmanifest, that's the opposite of the manifest, is the unmanifest, the nothingness. The definition of noumenon is that which is. So it's the emptiness or the no-thingness that really is the reality. And the appearance, the manifestation, is appearance only, that which appears to be. So we've always been locked in the wrong, not that there's a right and wrong, again, because on the false aspect of it. So that which appears to be, the phenomena, in essence, cannot be any other thing than pure intelligence energy. It's just patterns of that intelligence energy, which is no thing, vibrating into different shapes and forms. So we take the shape and form to be real, rather than seeing through the shape and form into the essence of it, which is still that one and the same thing.
That's why when you get it, you start to laugh like a lunatic. Right?
Yeah, big relief, isn't it? Release from it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Then right away you go back into and then start going about your business and forgetting.
Yeah, well, go about your business just like you did before, and even though although part of our line when we thought we didn't know, or we thought we were looking, we were still that anyway. So it doesn't really matter, but we had erroneous beliefs or concepts. We've never been, that's why I say we've never been anything other than that ever. Nothing can be added to that, nothing can be taken away. And that's why it can never be grasped by the mind. Because the nature of the mind, which is a pattern of energy or vibration, is dualism. It's like the manifestation is dualism. It's vibrating always in the pairs of opposites, which is duality. So how can something dualism, that is duality, grasp non-duality? It can't. And we look for years and years in the mind, and we never find it, purely and simply because the mind can't grasp it.
So when we get to here, there's no way back. We should be here, but we don't, because then you start talking again and you're going on.
Yeah, but in the talking, this is what it is, in the talking, it's just like the blue sea. The blue sea is going to be there. Knowing the truth about it, you're not involved in the talking as an entity.
Okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Talking and activities take place, but the clouds come into the sky. There's not a cloud attached to the sky.
Yeah.
ever. And it couldn't take place anywhere other than in the sky. So we, this can't take, in that emptiness, like sky-like emptiness, all this manifestation is going in. Doesn't mean to say it's got to stop or change, it's just seeing it for what it is, knowing that even though it appears to be this, that and the other, none of it's got any substance or any independent nature.
But even so, then when you get diagnosed as having the big C or something, you get scared again because you jump back into I'm going to die, or I have whatever it is I have.
And you can understand from that why the people that do understand that lose the fear of death.
Yes.
Because they know, even if they don't think this body is going to pass, which it's going to be, and there may be pain there, they know that this body can fall off.
Right.
It's just like a wave coming on the ocean, and then a ripple, and then something else. Has a wave ever been anything other than water? And when it recedes, it'll go back into water again. So we're just like the ocean, ever changing, but never changing.
But you can't be convinced of this.
Oh yes, you can. That conviction certainly comes with it.
Well, that's.
That that's the beauty of it. You see it seen clearly. And that conviction arises in that nobody can ever toss you out of it. Who can move you away from nothing?
Yeah.
All the saints, saviours of Christ, the Buddhas and everyone else have never gone beyond no thingness. No matter however descriptive their experiences might be, and ecstatic and sublime and all this other crap, none of them have ever gone beyond no thing. And I know for certain that I am that no thing. Don't you?
Well, therein lies the crux of the matter. It's like Merrill said, intellectually, I have to say yes. All the evidence points to that.
Yes, but don't you see our problems are always labelling something? Why put the label intellectual into it? If you haven't got that label, you know. Just the same as we call ourselves human beings and we call God the Supreme Being, and thereby create a difference. But if you understand the word supreme as a label and the word human as a label, and you take those labels away, can you separate the beingness without a label? This is being a table, that's being a glass with water in, that's being Merrill, that's being Jack, this is being Bob. Take away the table, the glass, the water, the label water, Merrill and Jack, what's left? Being. And being means ising. It's not something that's coming or going, it's what is right now. And when you hear this, innately you've already known it and you resonate with it. That's why you've been on this track. There's that been resonation, that energy, tells us it's always been there, but because it's your natural state and it's been grossed over by the acquired mind, the reasoning that started at 2 o'clock, like a cloud blocking the sun, but the sun is always never in the sky. The cloud never blocks it. And when the resonation happens, it's like, the sun breaking through the cloud. It wants to hear it because it's been waiting to hear it all along. And in that resonation, the activity starts to happen of its own accord. And as Balsakar says, you've got the head in the tiger's mouth, and as Nisargadatta says, it's like putting a match in a bale of cotton. Once your match is in a bale of cotton, it starts to smoulder. You can't put it out. It'll smoulder until the whole bale is burnt. And looking at that and keep looking at it, and that conviction must happen.
I was going to say, when am I going to go on fire?
I just understood something, Bob, that I never got before. You've told me 100 times, when I say, well, you get it intellectually, and you say, no, get rid of that word intellectually. If you see a rope that you think is a snake, then you realize it's a rope. You don't say, well, intellectually I know it's a rope. It looked like a snake, now it looks like a rope, and you go, oh, it's a rope. But this thing that we have a tendency to do, well, I know that intellectually, but if you know it, you know it. If you've realized that there is no, that there is no me, that the reference point is an illusion, the me is an illusion, if you know that, you know it. But there's something that makes a person want to say, well, I don't really know it, I know it intellectually.
Again,
you know it.
Again, they've taken all this crap about the hierarchy. You know, someone knows it, but I don't.
Right.
I'm not good enough to know it.
Right.
Something like that. You see. There's all this crap we've been conditioned to believe. Somebody's got it, somebody hasn't. Everybody and everything is that. If what the ancients have told us all the way down, it's one without a second. There's nothing other. How could you not be that? Why believe that you are not by that? Why be in another erroneous belief? Start from the fact, as I say here, that you already are that. And then all you've got to do is look and see what's stopping you from seeing it. What concept are you holding that's stopping you from seeing it?
It's just another story we make up.
Yeah, the stories we make up. Understand they're only stories. And you can make up whatever stories you like. You don't believe fairy tales, but you enjoy them. So see it for what it is. Play, enjoy the play.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about on the way over. Because there's always the but comes in.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's great, but.
Yeah, that one of that first thing that comes in, but, you know,
But, yeah.
a movement away. We hear it instead of sitting with it.
Right.
Immediately the mind wants to take over again with a but.
Because we expect something to happen, and it's already happened,
Yeah,
right? In other
that's
words,
right.
We're expecting the lights to go on and this great vision.
And that would be another experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it would come and it would go. But you know, it doesn't matter here whether there's silence or whether there's lights or chatter or anything. They're all experience. What I am is the experiencing, the base in which they appear on. Just like, you know, you are seeing right now, aren't you? You're seeing. So you are the seeing. But when that seeing is divided up into I see, and I see the lamp, well, the I see becomes the pseudo-subject, and the lamp becomes the object. But don't you see they're both contained in seeing? Without seeing there couldn't be a seer, could there? And without seeing there couldn't be the seen. So the seer and the seen, the pseudo-subject and object, are contained in the seeing. They're just two ends of seeing. They're not, there's not two different things. They're the one thing in two different aspects of it, two different patterns of it.
So then all of this in the final analysis is the conditioning, the buts and everything is the conditioning over the basic I am or
yeah, like the cloud in the sky.
Yeah, those are the clouds.
Like the cloud. But conditioning, what, you know, again, if you ask yourself, what conditioning is there if I don't think about it? And you pause, you're not thinking anything, there's no conditioning there in that instant, no conditioning. But the other way you go, we try and analyse the conditioning and go on, like peeling the skin off an onion. Take one skin off, there's another one there. You can go on forever doing that and still never get to the end of your conditioning because another butt will come in. That's why I say you'll never find the answer in the mind. It's the nature of the mind to divide, and it'll continue to divide. We go down one path, we think we got to the end of that, but it never satisfies. It'll branch off into another path there and continue to divide down that. And that's why the psychiatrists and psychologists have got to divide it up in subconscious, superconscious, all different types of consciousness, thought, feeling and emotion. They've got, which is one and the same thing. Continuity of thought becomes feeling. And they break it up into all these divisions, and it's not their fault. They follow it, trying to work it out in the mind. But you'll never find an answer there. And we know this, you're intelligent people. That's the clock functioning. Intelligent people, and you've worked out many things in the mind, haven't you? Over the years, we've worked out many things. But the meaning or what life is or the essence of this, we've never been able to work out in the mind. Why? If you're intelligent, why hasn't it happened? You might pause and think, well, maybe I'm looking in the wrong direction. And that's all it amounts to. We've never turned back and looked and questioned ourselves until somebody points it out, maybe you're looking in the wrong direction. And that's what happened.
Yeah. 40 years of everything unknown to mankind to find out the simplest thing, right?
But you see, that's the thing. We start to say this much as a shame, but it was now then. It's now. And all that thought, all that idea of shame and it should have been sooner or what, disappears in that. 16 years as myself was on the searching was what. But you know, when I was saying the same thing around about the time that all this time has been wasted. Nothing has been wasted. It's all just as it is.
Yeah.
Really comes back, it was only now, anyway, all the time. And it doesn't really matter when you see you're that anyway, so you know, even though you didn't believe it or couldn't see it, that you were that anyway, that you were being lived. And if all the dramas and traumas that took place in my life hadn't happened, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now. And you wouldn't be here visiting me. And have a look, again, going back to the sperm and the ovum. Who was growing me? Who was living me then? It was happening effortlessly by itself. So it grew me, brought me out of the womb, brought me into childhood, boyhood, adulthood. And I thought I was a doer when I started reasoning, but I never was. All that had happened beforehand continued to happen afterwards, whether I thought I was a doer or not. But, you know, if I was the doer, I'd be making sure I took my next breath or had another heartbeat left. But we don't think of these things at all. They're happening naturally, you see, effortlessly. That's the natural state. That's the natural functioning. It's only the thinking, you know, that all that acquired mind, like being like the cloud that seemingly rocks, covers that natural state, but it's still functioning there. That's why it resonates when it hears this. It's been waiting to be recognised again for so long. Which, when I say so long, I'm getting into the concept of time. But I've got to make a story up.
Got to do that, yeah, sure. But I've heard, you know, you talk to people, you say, well, what do you mean you're not thinking? What's wrong with thinking? You know, we wouldn't have medicine, we wouldn't have anything if we weren't thinking,
Yeah.
reasoning, and what have you. You know.
Yes. The mind's not the enemy.
Right.
It's a wonderfully creative instrument. One, it's being a vibration. You know, it's got its positive aspect, but it's a wonderfully creative instrument. This house was an idea in somebody's mind once. That's all it was. So was the technology, that tape recorder. And the phone was an idea in somebody's mind once. So, it's, you know, it's wonderfully, all the art, all the, you know, all these things were ideas in somebody's mind. But at the other end of the scale, it puts the boundaries on it, the limitations, when it tells me I'm not good enough, or after all I've got low self-esteem, or, you know, I'm no good, I'll never get anyone in my life, or this will happen or that will happen. It's self-destructive. So at one end it's creative, and its opposite is self-destructive, and that's destructing. And the boundaries we put upon it are labels, just words. I'm not good enough, or this is wonderful, you know. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, the Word was God. The Word is the label, and that's all we put upon it, you know, when we start thinking of a reason of the label. But the Word can never be the thing. That's another thing that needs to be looked at. See that the Word is not the real, it's not the actual. You can, by that I mean you can say water, water for the rest of your life, and you won't quench your thirst with the Word. You can say fire, fire, fire. Does the word fire burn your mouth when it comes out? You know? And try and sit on, you know, the label you can write on a piece of paper, chair. Try and sit in the label chair. Or another way of putting it, the map is not the territory. You're coming up from down wherever you came from, you probably had a map.
Yeah.
Now you could pinpoint it on the map. That's where it is right there, pinpointed on the map.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the territory, it wasn't the actual, but it was a pointer on how to get there. So that's what we do with the mind, use it as a pointer.
But I'm going to butt again here because that's all I can say. Yeah, but you get to the nitty-gritty of this, and everything is explained in the frame of reference you're using. But other people, which there are none of, think you have to be a mental case to think you're not the doer.
Yeah. Well, what other people think, if you've seen that you're not the doer and that conviction has arisen, doesn't matter what other people, let them stay in their bondage. You know? And that's what we're talking about. We had somebody here this morning who says, when I go out there again, I'll be back in the world and we get caught up. And I'll say yes, purely and simply because 99% of the world are in that self-centered. They're never investigated. And if you listen to them and go back, you can seemingly be trapped in it again. But if you continue to investigate and look and see for yourself, instead of them dragging you in, you'll be able to drag them out. They can never trap you back in, because you know the truth and you're free in that truth. They're still in their self-centers and reference points, in the conditioned beliefs, erroneous beliefs, and they will have the problem. You won't.
So I think we have something else in common. I understand you were in AA or something many years back.
Yeah, I still am, but I'm not very active now. I don't get to many.
50 years ago, I was in AA too.
Oh, yeah.
I made a year, and I've been sober ever since.
Good, that's good.
I got that message. If you don't take one drink, you're not going to take another.
Yeah, that's simple enough, isn't it?
So it was very simple when I got that. But it wasn't simple the first year.
No.
It was very, very
Again, we had to,
difficult
yes,
yeah.
you had to get used to it.
Yeah.
And the conviction of it, again. So it's the same with us. You keep pondering and looking at it and getting used to it. And, yeah, I got 44 up. 44 about.
I had a small vacation. When I had 9 years, I took a small vacation to see if I was an alcoholic or not. And there it says, well, I guess I am. But it didn't last very long.
What do you mean a small vacation?
Well, I wanted to see if I'm an alcoholic.
Oh.
Well, I was sober 9 years, from 26 to like 34, 35. And I thought, yeah, I'll have a taste. And I was doing really good until I strangled my wife and I thought I killed her. And that was the end of that 5 years. So what do you think of this place? This is the first time you've ever been in the States?
It is
right?
for me. Barbara was in San Francisco. Well, is there anything other than that?
No.
One without a second. When you say you must be that, there's no getting of that.
Well, what I'm recognizing right now in the conversation and seeing other people is that a couple of months ago when I was talking to you on the phone and stuff, I was asking the same exact questions, and I kept thinking that how does a person ever get to that point of really knowing that they're not the me and they're not the reference point, and I just don't question it anymore. I mean, I get caught up in the reference point. Something will happen and I'll think, oh, what happened to me? I feel bad, and then I'll remember there is no me. It's a concept. It's a mental construct. But I don't have this thought that I have to get to the point of losing that reference point. I know the reference point will come up when it comes up. When it comes up, it'll either take a second to remember it's fake. It'll take an hour to remember it's fake. I don't think it's going to take even an hour, to be honest. But I mean, the point is, it's understood. And for that, I am eternally grateful. And in a strange sense, it's like I don't know how I got here.
You were always there.
I was always there, that's for sure.
If there's only that, that's simple enough to see it, isn't it? You must always be there.
Oh, I see that. I was always there, but I didn't know it. Didn't know it, had no clue.
How do you know you didn't know it?
That's interesting.
Well, wasn't there a knowing there to be able to say either I know or I don't know? Could you say I didn't know it without that knowingness there?
Knowingness has always been and will always be.
Right. So that's it. Even saying I don't know it is an erroneous statement, isn't it, from that point? It's the knowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I used to do a meditation because I when I got into Advaita, I read that all these people that had awakened, and I'm talking about the kind of dramatic awakenings, write all the books and the, oh, I'm in heaven and all that stuff, they would all say, when they got there, they realized they had always been there. So I used to meditate and say, what the hell are they talking about? Because if that's true, I must be there now and just not know it. So I'd meditate and say, okay, what's here that's...
Yeah. But you see, the subtlety is that I didn't know it, or I should know it, or I will know it, But the thing you can't negate is that knowingness is with you now, that consciousness or awareness.
Right.
Different concepts we use to point it, you know.
What?
The different concepts we're using to point to us,
Right.
but the knowingness,
The knowingness has always been there.
yeah, it must always be there, as I say. That knowingness is pure intelligence. And that's what intelligence as the energy
The
is.
reference point didn't know it, though. The reference point had no clue.
Well, the reference point is a fiction. You've
Right.
investigated that and seen there's nothing substantial there
Right.
with any independent nature.
Right.
It's a fiction. So, it's just like we're walking down the street on a dark night. You walk past the light pole, and you see a movement behind you, and you think somebody's after you, so you hurry along to the next. And as you pass the next pole, you see this movement behind you going faster, so you race along to the next one, and you finally look over your shoulder and see it's only your shadow. Another great sigh of relief in seeing it, and you're going to hurry along any further. You've been suffering under an illusion. Something was chasing you because we never investigated
Except that the illusion wasn't real. The story that I didn't know it, the story that I was suffering wasn't real.
Yeah.
The story that there was a me getting suffering isn't even real. Only thing that's real is
That which is happening in.
that which is happening right now.
But isn't it necessary to have this body-mind mechanism that what is translates through it?
To have that pattern, yeah.
We have this package in order to
Yeah,
believe in.
if it wasn't vibrating into patterns, there would be nothing, It'd be in its unicity, in its oneness. There's nothing, there's no, nothing to divide. It's just as it is. It's just like space, empty. But the emptiness of space, space is emptiness, but that emptiness, cognizing emptiness, suffused with the knowingness, suffused with that capacity of knowing, which is intelligence. And that intelligence vibrates as such, and different patterns appear. But it's still that empty. It's still no thing in essence. And you can't grasp no thing. See, innocence, it can't know itself. Now, what's the very first thing you see? You're seeing right now, what's the very first thing you see?
What is the very first thing that I see?
Yeah. What you're seeing right now, what's the very...
Everything.
Oh, well, what's this everything? What's the first thing you see?
The label. What are you seeing? That's what he's asking.
Well, I'm seeing Del, and I'm seeing you.
Is that the first thing you see?
Well, I don't know, because until you ask that question, I wouldn't be able to think about what's the first thing I see.
Well, I'm not talking about, just actually, what are you seeing? What's the very first thing? This is where we miss it, you see. The very first thing you see is space, isn't it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I see what fills space. I don't see the
Yes.
space.
Yeah. No, that's what I say. You see what fills space, you see the content of space,
Yes.
but you don't take any notice of what the content is taking place in. It's taking place in that emptiness, that space-like emptiness, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So the focus is always on the content.
Yes.
Now, space is no thing, is it? You can't see it, as you say.
Yeah.
You can't define it. It's got no centre or no circumference. So using that metaphor, which they do, space-like awareness, using space as the essence of awareness, so space can't see itself in its natural state. But the content of space can really be, space is nothing, so something cannot come from nothing, can it? So the content of space must be nothing in essence, because it's the content. Now, if space can't see itself, what happens? A pattern of energy forms around it, and that energy is light, and it's shining out of your eyes, and the very first thing you see is space. So from that point of view, space is able to recognise. But if that pattern of energy wasn't around, that's what I'm trying to explain, without any patterns in it, you wouldn't know it. So that's the only way space can know itself is through a pattern of energy around. And when you look here where your eyes are, how many eyes have you got? When you try and see how many eyes you've got, the eye can't see itself. You've got no eyes that you can see. There's just an open space here in which seeing is happening. You know? So space is seeing space and the content. The same with awareness. You know, instead of taking any notice and focusing on awareness, we focus on the content of awareness. The thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the patterns of energy in it and everything like that. And we miss what the essence is, the content, the space, the awareness itself, and we focus on the content, just the same as we don't focus on the space. Yet it's obvious. It's the most obvious and evident thing, which is no thing, in this room or in the universe is space. There's more space here than what there is content. Even you can take the largest galaxies, you know, in the universe or in the cosmos. There's still, you know, the vastness of space still encompassing till they're less than a, you know, from a distance that's less than a small dot. It's the most obvious and evident thing, and we miss it. So awareness is the most obvious and evident thing, and we miss it. We focus on the content.
Hidden lagoon behind us too.
Stepped off on the wrong foot there.